And we are joined now from Cairo by the deputy editor of Al-Ahram newspaper, Ashraf Abu El-Houl. Welcome. Now, what does Israel want from the incursions in and beyond the buffer zone and destroying Syrian military infrastructure?
Firstly, I wish to salute you all. Israel's objective is only one, is just to destroy the assets of Syria militarily, and then Syria won't be able to regain its potentials once again in order to regain the occupied Syrian lands from Israel. Israel has occupied the heights, Al-Julan heights, and Israel wishes that this current situation to dismantle Syria ultimately to small states. That means they will be overwhelmed with each other, and therefore Israel will be the greatest winner as annexing the Golan effectively. In addition, further that issued Knesset decree to have Al-Golan included to Israeli land, and the UN has, or rather the United States has recognized Golan as a part from Israel, and Israel wished to make it as an absolute reality and sustained.
Now, Netanyahu just told Jake Sullivan that the Israeli violations of the 1974 agreement is temporary, and there are 2 points here. That first of all, that it's a violation of an agreement and that it's temporary. How do you comment on this?
When Netanyahu talking about the violations of the disengagement agreement, it isn't the main one, but in the Israeli-Syrian conflict that Israel is occupied the Syrian Golan, and the agreement of 1974 is just an agreement to disengagement between the Syrian and Israeli troops upon the 1973 October war. When Netanyahu talks only about the disengagement agreement and ignoring the origin of the issue, which is the occupying of Al-Julan.
All right, now everyone now is monitoring the first few weeks of the new situation in Syria. How do you think destroying military infrastructure could impact the country's hope for any stability and security?
Certainly, destroying the military infrastructure of the Syrian army would make Syria exposed upon all scenarios, and they might witness a civil war. Syria will be dismantled. There will be a conflict between the armed factions that control in Syria now, as they have a great numbers, and they are current disagreement ideologically between these factions with each other, and therefore a repeated scenario will be happen as the jihadist groups that fought the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and after the fall or the withdrawal of the Syrian troops, there was some conflict between these troops and Afghanistan controlled by Taliban. Now there are some concern and fears that conflicts will emerge once again in Syria in light of the vacuum of constitution and the military, and these groups might move their activities to the neighboring countries and pose a threat to the region and the world if they are not disciplined in the transitional period.
Now, there have been statements made by the G7 There have been statements made by France alone, apart from the G7, and Germany, apart from the G7, surrounding or around what's going to happen in Syria and what they want to happen in Syria, including stability and security. Now, what kind of role should the international community and perhaps through the UN play in addressing what's happening in Syria?
Unfortunately, the international community addressed Syria negatively, left Syria that paved the way to exploit the situation and destroy the military assets of the Syrian people, destroying the aircraft, vessels, tanks, the military establishment, and the missile factories, and therefore didn't do nothing. They never intervene in the political processes that are taking place in Syria, and the matter is left only to the tensions of these groups, centrally, if they were committed politically, and if there's not, no one would do anything as such. While there's a necessity for the international community and a pressure for all parties from the beginning to maintain the unity of the Syrian territories and the Syrian army, and the guarantee to have a peaceful, transitional, and smooth for the power in Syria.
Well, thank you very much. That was the Deputy Editor of Al-Ahram newspaper, Ashraf Abu El-Houl. Thank you for your insights and for joining us on Q News.